Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, of course, the beginning of last weekend was pretty soggy. We're looking here at a map showing the last 3 days of total accumulated precipitation, and on Friday, the heavier rains did move through parts of the Carolinas here, at some locations easily picking up well over an inch of rainfall. I actually came through Charlotte, and we got stuck at the airport for quite some time just due to the persistence of this rainfall. Pretty wet start to the weekend. Well, to put this into broader context, I want to show you what the latest drought monitor map looked like back on January 30th. So this came out last Thursday. We can see that finally the regions that we had been watching that had been dry are starting to show up in the first stages of drought. And the big questions we need to talk about here, will the coastal Carolinas continue to see drought as we move through the month of February? Because, as you're going to see here in a few moments, the pattern is setting things up to be quite active. Now, just to show you where it has been driest, this is over the last 30 days, looking at the percent of normal precipitation. And this, of course, includes the heavy rainfall we had over the weekend. But still, that little area right in through there, which does cut through parts of the coastal Carolinas, getting down to southern Georgia and Florida, still showing up quite dry, whereas virtually every place east of there until you get to the Rocky Mountains has been very, very wet. Well, just to put this into broader context, I want to show you a map that looks at calculated soil moisture anomalies or differences from normal. And I've shown you this several times, but we need to keep this in mind. You see, we still have in parts of the north central plains a huge excess of water that it continues down here into the Central Plains and the Mississippi River Valley, and eventually down into lower Mississippi River Valley. The Tennessee Valley drains into this, the Mississippi, the Ohio, getting from the Missouri, it all comes down here into the lower Mississippi River Valley. And why I'm showing you this is because as we continue to let our ideas evolve about spring, this particular area that I've highlighted is already going to be struggling with spring flooding issues. That's just due to the saturated soils we already have in place. So when we think about those crops we are in competition with out of the Carolinas into the central part of the United States, corn, soybeans, wheat, things like this, know how wet things have been for that section of the country so far this winter. Now, with all the heat that was in place on Groundhog's Day, this is a map showing you on Sunday, Groundhog's Day departure from normal. Not the only cold places were down here in Florida and the Pacific Northwest, and much of the rest of the country quite above average. I'm very anxious to see what that soil moisture anomaly map looks like after we start this week, because we were melting a lot of the snowpack right in through this area, and this expanded even farther to the north as we got through the day on Groundhog's Day. So I'm just wanting to keep you aware of what's happening in the midsection of the country as we progress forward here with the excessive amount of water that we have in the soil. Now, this jet stream pattern says it's going to continue to get wetter. So you're looking down on the North Pole. I love these views, okay? The jet stream right now starts in Africa. Watch where I'm drawing here. Comes across Asia into the Central Pacific Ocean. So you see that again right in through this corridor. Now, once it gets into the Central Pacific, it splits into one branch that comes like this up toward Alaska, and a secondary branch that comes down here, our subtropical branch that then cuts into Texas. Now, what we're going to see is that midweek this week, this particular trough, I'll draw a line through it right here, has out ahead of it a jet streak in this area and a jet streak there. So those jet streaks are regions of faster moving air within the jet stream flow. And they're going to be working together to give us the development. I'll draw it in white, a low pressure center developing right in through this area. And as that low pressure pushes through middle and end of week, well, what's going to start off to be a relatively drier week for the Carolinas is going to finish on a much wetter note. And by the way, I know we had the groundhog come out and give us the long-range forecast for in early spring. That may be applicable if you're in the eastern third of the United States, but I'll tell you, folks out west aren't going to buy this at all due to this split flow pattern. If you ask me, we should maybe replace the groundhog, and I know it's a lot of fun to do that, but maybe replace the groundhog with simply just watching Alaska. That's going to be key in figuring out this pattern. So let's get into it. Over the next week, this is what we're looking at in terms of total accumulated precipitation. This is the European models forecast, and it's very much in alignment with the pattern coming up from the GFS as well. So what we're going to see overall is the pattern comes in split like this, avoiding California, but coming back together right here in Texas. And as a result, as we work toward the end of the week, well, you can see the heavier rains that are going to be moving toward the Carolinas here. Now, for the for the potential for some snow, it's all going to be on the backside here. It's not going to be able to get over to the Carolinas. Maybe in the Appalachian Mountains, see some snowflakes like we did see at the end of last week. But overall, this isn't going to be a setup that's going to be diving cold air in like this, giving us those storm systems that bring the snow to North Carolina that we can get in February. Nope, it's not that. Everything is lifting in this direction, and let me zoom you in and show you what we're looking at in terms of total accumulated precip. The potential exists in the Appalachian Mountains, getting over here towards Tennessee, for 2.5 to 3.5, 4 inches of rainfall out of this week. The reason why you see the gradient getting less as you go here is partly due to the mountains, but it's also due to the fact these storm systems are lifting in this direction. So still, much of the state by the end of this week and weekend could have an additional 1.5 to 3 inches of rainfall. So we better get in and take a look at what this is going to look like here. Before I do that, over the following week, so this is week 2, getting us all the way out to the evening of February 17th, I still see the pattern doing the same thing. The GFS model is advertising this split coming together over Texas. Subtropical branch takes off wet and through this area. The European model, much broader area of wetter weather, but same exact setup. You can see it right there. So parts of the southeast, the mid-south, getting over into parts of the south central United States, very, very wet. So when we think about the early planting of corn and cotton, peanuts, whatever's going in the ground right now, sweet potatoes, these are the things we need to be on the lookout for as we progress through February, as potentially holding us back a little bit. Temperatures doing much of the same thing. With the ridge building in here and the trough coming in out west, that's where our cooler weather is going to set up this week. And we're going to be seeing temperatures in the Carolinas this week much above average. We're talking middle 70s to start the week off, and cooling back off into the mid to upper 60s as we move to the middle of the week and the rain arrives. Getting out today 5 through 10, though, much more moderate pattern across the Carolinas as advertised by the European model. But notice this, as I take you all the way out to mid-month, that flow pattern is just reinforced, and we're going to continue to see the southeastern ridge, which is hanging out way down here, but it's going to be keeping this region with moderate to mild temperatures at times. But just don't forget, with the trough in the west and a ridge over the southeast over Cuba, this section of the United States stays very active in terms of weather systems. This is almost exactly like we saw in spring of 2019. So I want to stretch it out, give you that longer term view, because this was the latest model runs from the European model, and this goes from February 10th through March 10th. So February 10th through March 10th, and the models just aren't backing away from the influence of that subtropical jet splitting around the ridge out west in terms of precip. And like I said, I think that many across the eastern third of the United States may think that the groundhog nailed it this year, but not in the western United States, where the cold air from Alaska will be at times spilling down. So in general, as we look across the next 15 to 30 days for the Carolinas, there will be shots of colder air. This map just simply means that the possibility of that being long duration is relatively low at this point, especially over the next 15 days. Of course, beyond 15 days, we lose some of our reliability, but that's been the kind of the mainstay of the models now for the last few runs here. So let's now get into some of the details. With that heavier rainfall, we do have to watch out for a multi-day severe weather outbreak. On Tuesday, so tomorrow, we're going to be watching carefully in the lower Mississippi River Valley. By Wednesday, with the slow spreading to the east of this system, it will be getting down into the parts of the southeast. But for us in the Carolinas, I want to keep a close eye on the day on Thursday. I'll show you this in animation in a few minutes. But right now, day 4, Storm Prediction Center's already got North and South Carolina under their kind of broader risk area. So we need to see what this system's going to do as it moves through. Now, your first couple of days of this week start off quiet. Here's Monday getting into Tuesday. We don't see scattered showers trying to move in here really until Wednesday. You can watch that again. While to the north and west of us, we have quite a bit of rain coming through parts of the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley. So we get away at the beginning of this week relatively dry. When does the precipitation get here? Well, it's with our second system. So let's go to the European model. We'll pause it right here. We've seen through Wednesday morning. Widely scattered showers Wednesday, feeding around this large high-pressure center. So what's going on here? This is pretty neat. With a high sitting here and a high sitting here, remember they both spin clockwise. And as a result, right in between, we have a stationary boundary. And it's on that boundary that the precipitation starts. And then the next system, this is now valid Wednesday evening when we have the widespread scattered showers moving across the Carolinas. Well, that next system forms right on that boundary over Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and then moves toward the northeast. Now, because the trajectory of this system is like this, not digging at all. We're going to be all rain as we try to cool off a little bit toward the end of this week, but cooling off back toward normal temperatures with some heavy rainfall. Thursday afternoon and evening, that's where we're starting to get concerned about the Carolinas for the severe weather. This will be the time period, Thursday evening, it looks like, that we'll get the heaviest rain in the Appalachian Mountains. And as that comes out into the Carolinas, that's when we're starting to get concerned here for the potential for some strong to severe storms. So I'm hovering back and forth here between Thursday night to Friday midday. That's when I'm concerned about it. But that pushes on through, and then what you're going to see is the atmosphere goes right back over into it, splitting over the west. Deep trough digs in here, and watch another system emerge next weekend that could push through here by Sunday. Now, this is the one where I think we could get some more snow in the Appalachian Mountains. And the reason why, the colder air coming in behind the system before it, well, this one interacts with that colder air and brings our snow levels down here, maybe to 3,500 feet or so, as this next system potentially comes through next Saturday, getting into Sunday morning. And that pulls on east. But I remember what we saw. Things just keep going as we go on out to the middle of the month here. So we have a pretty active end of our week this week and another shot this weekend, and then we're going to go right back over into it beginning with next week as well. So putting that all together, looking over the next 15 days, this is what precipitation looks like in terms of anomalies, differences from normal. And I'm going to draw the same thing I've been drawing for you. You're getting pretty familiar with this pattern. And that is why much of that corridor I just circled an oval there is showing up on the wetter side of things as we progress through the middle of this month. Okay, from here, I'm going to take you on a reasoning for why I think it's going to be hard to get cold air to stay in place. So starting with the two figures that are on the right, they're showing us two separate circulations we need to keep a close eye on. First is the Arctic Oscillation. The second is the North Atlantic Oscillation. Notice that both of them are going into positive territory. What does that mean? Well, if the Arctic Oscillation, the graphic that's on the bottom, is staying in positive territory, that tells me that the stratospheric polar vortex and its ability to influence the cold air near the surface of the Arctic is such that it's going to hang on to that cold air. If this were to split and go south like this, go to the bottom of this figure, well, that would allow the cold air to go south, but it's not. What about the North Atlantic Oscillation? That's the graph on the top there. This tells me what's going on over Greenland. Now, if we want to get cold air into the eastern half of the United States, into the Carolinas, we need Greenland to go hot. If the North Atlantic Oscillation is positive like this and not negative, it's hard for that to happen. Add that to the fact that the Mad-Julian Oscillation is in null phase and going out to 5 and 6, which we know are warm phases. And the polar vortex by the end of this week is now sitting here over parts of Siberia and a piece over northern Europe. That just tells me that the chances of bringing in colder air, long-term sustained colder air, into the Carolinas through the middle half of the month of February is not necessarily in the works by any stretch. What this is going to influence, though, is what's happening in Europe. So check this out. Europe has had a very warm winter. The Russian wheat belt, a very warm winter. But by the end of this week, see the Black Sea right in through here? Ukraine, the Russian wheat belt, are going to be snapping over towards some colder weather. Now, just to convert the graphic here, which is in Celsius, over to Fahrenheit, just remember this. Minus 10 Fahrenheit is the equivalent of 14 Celsius. So the Black Sea is right in here. So this section of Ukraine and the Russian wheat belt is going to be seeing some temperatures in the teens and eventually into the single digits when we're talking about Fahrenheit. Now, if that area, which up until now has been relatively snow-free, again, the Black Sea, I'll draw it in white here, is right in through this area. The main snowy regions are up here. There's a little bit of snow in there, but that is going to melt by the end of this week. If this area remains snow-free when that cold air comes in, we could be talking about some damage to the winter wheat crop in this area. But it does look as though as the colder air comes in, we're going to be filling in this area. So what area am I talking about? Black Sea is here. This is our snow-free region where we grow a lot of wheat. This is Ukraine where we grow quite a bit of winter wheat. What it looks like is that before the really cold air gets in here, we're going to have a stripe in this area of some heavier snowfall. Regions outside of that don't have snow, with the colder air that's coming in, this could impact that winter wheat crop. Just something to be on the lookout for, okay? Let's watch it carefully to see if it becomes a weather news story by the end of this week. Finally, just want to give you an update on what's going on in South America. Over the next week, we are expecting very wet conditions in Mato Grosso, Goiás, Tocantins, getting over to Brazil's eastern growing areas. Drier to the south, so I'm talking about Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, and getting into Uruguay. Now, with soybeans right now at about 35% harvested, we seeing this wetter weather in this area is going to delay the planting a little bit of corn and cotton. But I don't rely on right now looking at any of the longer range forecasts for Brazil and Argentina because they've been busting pretty bad as of late. So I'm going to stick to this 7 to 10 day window here and just show you wet in the near term. Also, very critical rainfall coming down here into Argentina's main growing area. Rainfall that is desperately needed to help this crop finish strong. So, but we're going to focus more, I think, on the harvest and then planting progress of the safrinha crop here in parts of Brazil's central and northern growing regions. As the rain's going to hamper things now, but we need to keep a close eye on it as we finish the month of February. Okay. So with that, I want to give you that international perspective on things. Like I said, end of this week is going to be the wetter side of things. Watch out for some severe weather toward the end as well. And with that, we'll go and wrap it up right here. Thank you for watching. Talk to you again very soon.